Okay, welcome everyone. This is our daily Native Wellness Power Hour. So I'm just getting situated here. Welcome everyone. My name is Jillene Joseph. I will be your facilitator today on the Power Hour. Hold on, I'm just trying to. Joseph, I will be your facilitator today. Oops, I'm just trying to share it on my page. So welcome everyone. This is our week 64 of our Native Wellness Power Hours. I think today is like our 357th Power Hour. I believe we're at that. So please share so that others can join us today and tune in. It's Friday. Yay, we made it to Friday. So the power hours, I haven't been on for a while. Lots has been going on. And so I've been out of the power hour scene. So it feels good to be back with you all. And when I was thinking about my topic, we're having conversations internally about how long are we going to do the power hours? Our original intent, we started them on March 21st, 2020, and our original intent was to offer these as our contribution to the pandemic, right? To help keep people uplifted and inspired and provide opportunities for healing and learning tools to, live in balance and all that kind of stuff during the pandemic. So here we are now, nearly a year and a half into the pandemic, and people are starting to get out and about a little bit more, things like that. So we're having conversations about, well, how long are we going to do these power hours? And so anyway, today my topic is something about like inspirational quotes or something like that, and how well, I'll tell you about how that inspired me. But before I get going, though, I have all these things open on my desktop. I'm trying to find I wrote my notes for today. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. My name is Jillene. In our language, we say Naha. Ni'i Naha ben e ta siniki. I'm glad you're here with us today. My name is Jillene Joseph. My Indian name is Do Nate, and I am the executive director of the Native Wellness Institute. And I'm one of the founders as well of the organization. Myself and a handful of us started this organization 21 years ago in March. So this past March, we're celebrating our 21st year of existence. And what we do is we're a training and technical assistance providing organization. We go into communities all over North America, and sometimes our work has taken us into other places as well. And we exist because of the lasting impacts of historical and intergenerational trauma. And just as importantly, we exist because of the impacts of historical and intergenerational wisdom and healing. And so we just help our people connect the dots between trauma and behavior, and then provide solutions to help us move past that. So our Power Hours has been one of those platforms that we've used just to, help people along your healing and wellness journey. So thanks for being here. Please share the live stream so that others can tune in. It's just going to be a fun hour of hearing from different quotes and notes and things like that, and just sharing a little bit about them. So how I thought of this idea was I finally got a new phone. I've had this old phone forever, a flip phone. No, just kidding. I upgraded a long time ago from my flip phone, but I had an old phone and it was cracked and all this kind of stuff. And I've just been putting off getting a new one. And then I did order a new one, and then I sent it to the wrong address. Anyway, I finally got a new phone. And so as I was going through my old phone and just deleting photos, and I went into my notes and I was thinking, oh, is there anything in here that I should just delete? That I don't have to switch over to my new phone. And so I start going through my notes, the app on my phone, my notes. And I started finding like all of these quotes and all of these, notes that I was taking from, I don't know, like maybe watching TV shows or reading books or, having conversations with people or whatever, and just kind of reviewing them again. And like I do, that's kind of one of my norms, is to like go through my notes and, just reread these things, right? Be re-inspired by these things in my phone. And then I have these other quotes that I have on little sticky notes, and they're like on my computer screen right now. Of course, you can't see them. And so I thought, wow, that would be like a cool power hour, is to talk about these quotes and like what they mean to me or how they inspire me. So that's what today's power hour is about. So I'm just going to share some different ones. So this first quote that I'm gonna start with, actually, the person that said it, I know him, but I didn't hear him say this. I heard somebody else say it just a few weeks ago, actually. But the quote says, "When I learned to pray with my feet, I got straight and sober." So I'll repeat that again. When I learned to pray with my feet, I got straight and sober. So this was a quote from a man by the name of Vince Wanasi, and he has since passed away. But I know him, and somebody that he had mentored, a gentleman who actually is one of my mentors, by the name of Terry Cross. We did this training a couple weeks ago, and he shared this quote in that training. And what it means is, and Vince has shared his story with me as well. Like, he went to treatment 21 times before it finally clicked, and before he finally like got it right. And one of the things that helped him like get it is when he started dancing. So when he started dancing, so that's what that quote means. When I learned to pray with my feet, I got straight and sober. So that he considered his dancing a prayer. So when he started dancing, that's what did it for him, right? He had this connection, to everything, a connection to his culture, a connection to his people, a connection to the land that he danced on. So when his feet, touched the ground that way, he considered it a prayer. When I learned to pray with my feet, I got straight and sober. So that's inspiring. I actually wrote that down on a sticky, and it's on my computer screen. So I wanted to share that. So another quote, and this is what I'm going to be doing for the next hour, is just sharing these different things and just talking a little bit about them and how they've inspired me, with the hopes of that they'll inspire you as well. So another quote that I have on my screen as well was, many months ago, in during this pandemic. I don't remember how long ago, but we helped, this organization out of Seattle called Mother Nation. We helped them with their conference, and so I got to hear all kinds of, amazing speakers during that time. And so when I hear things, or I resonate with things, like, I write them down. So I wrote this down on a um, on a sticky as well, and have it on my computer. So this elder from, her name's Ramona, and what she said was, "I didn't know I could be happy. I didn't know I could have a life full of joy." So the context that she was talking about was, you know, she grew up in a home of, addiction and violence, and all of that, and that she thought that was her norm. She thought, like, that's how her life would be, and she grew up without joy and happiness, until she learned about, healing, until she learned about living a life like without alcohol. And then she realized that she could have happiness and joy in her life. So she said, "I didn't know I could be happy. I didn't know I could have a life full of joy." So I'm sharing that because, like, we can, right? We can be happy, and we can have a life full of joy. Like, we can, right? And it's really up to us to do that. It's up to us to want it, and it's up to us to feel worthy of a life of happiness and joy. And then it's up to us to believe that we can have a life of joy and happiness. So I wanted to share that, of course, because I want everyone to feel that and to experience that. And related to that, I always say, like with healing, the Native Wellness Institute, we're all about helping our people to heal. And sometimes even that word heal can be, kind of ambiguous, right? Like what is that? And what does it mean? So healing, like if I was going to look it up in a dictionary or something like that, I would find that it's a Hebrew derived word that means to become whole. And we know that it means to become whole physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And kind of how I visualize healing is like looking at, excuse me, looking at all the kind of like all the stuff that we hold on to that weighs us down, that takes the space of where like joy and happiness and love and kindness and compassion could be. Getting rid of that stuff is healing, like cleansing ourselves of anger and rage and all that kind of stuff, resentment and grief and all of that. That is healing. That's what I'm talking about. And so when we go through this healing process, one, we have to want it, right? That's the first thing. We have to want it. And that kind of seems, like, well, why wouldn't I want that? But there's a lot of our people that don't want healing. Maybe because they're so used of living in anger and resentment and all of that, right? So we have to want healing, just like we have to want happiness and joy. And then we have to feel worthy of it. Like I'm worthy of this. I'm worthy of feeling good. I'm worthy of being happy and having joy in my life, right? And then we have to believe. We have to believe that we can be healed, just like we have to believe that we can have happiness and joy in our life. So I wanted to share those. Those become like tools, right? So along those lines, when I was flipping through my notes in my phone, I found several others that were related to happiness as well. And so, this resonates with me because I am a happy person, right? I do have a lot of joy in my life. I am a positive person. And in part, it's because I want to be like that, and I feel worthy, right? I feel worthy. I feel like I deserve this, and I want it, right? And I want it for others too, because it feels good, and I want others to feel good. So another quote, and I don't even know who said this, but it was, like I said, it was in my notes. But the joy you feel moving towards your potential is happiness. So the joy you feel when you're moving towards your potential is happiness. So when we just kind of break that down and think about it for a little bit, the joy you feel moving towards your potential is happiness. So when we think about like our potential, right? And like what does that mean? Like what is potential, right? And moving forward, moving towards that is like understanding, in part, is like understanding your life's purpose, as an example, right? And then moving towards that potential. So we can do anything, right? And sometimes we have these limited belief systems about what we can be or what we can do. And so when we're moving towards, whatever, maybe you want to um, learn how to cook traditional foods, or harvest traditional foods, as an example, or whatever this vision is, right? That in part is your potential. So the joy you feel moving towards your potential is happiness. So these are just kind of some food for thought kinds of things to think about, right? So another quote, or sentence I had in my notes, and again, I didn't write down who said it or even where I got it, but it says, People are afraid of happiness. People are afraid of happiness. So that's kind of like another deep thing to think about, right? Like why? Like why is that? Why are people afraid of happiness? You know, and we can ask ourselves, am I afraid of happiness? Is this why I don't have it in my life? Right? So that's what today's about, like just helping us think about these things. So and these ones are all about happiness. I must have been listening to some show or something about happiness, and then wrote them down on my phone. So the next one says, our external world, okay, um, is success doesn't determine happiness. Okay, so our external world, right? Success doesn't determine happiness. So then we can think about, what does that mean, right? So when I hear that, what I think about is, money, or how much money I have in the bank, or the kind of car I drive, or whatever, all this kind of external stuff, like, isn't going to determine my happiness, right? So then I can think about, well, what is going to determine my happiness, right? And part, it's like, that the sentence that I just said before, the joy that I feel moving towards my potential, like that in part is going to determine my happiness, right? Choosing to have joy and happiness in my life is going to help. So, related to that, the next one talks about, if we don't have love, we don't have anything. Happiness is a choice. If we don't have love, we don't have anything. Happiness is a choice. So again, getting back to, wanting happiness and then choosing happiness, right? And I really think that, you know, related to happiness is, um, our attitude, of course, and it's also whether you choose to be positive or not. And I know that in the work that we do, one of the lasting impacts of trauma is chronic negativity. And often when we travel around in communities, we hear that a lot. People will say, yeah, one of the epidemics in our community is chronic negativity. Like, they'll call it an epidemic, right? And they call it an epidemic because so many people are negative, right? Well, that's a lasting impact of trauma. And when we seek to learn more about trauma and we understand that, we can have a little bit more patience and understanding for people that are chronically negative. Um, so I say this because I kind of like a frog in my throat today. One of my other favorite quotes, and I don't know who said it, but it's in my notes, but it says, speak to me in energy because it will be easier for me to understand you. Speak to me in energy because it will be easier for me to understand you. So this is related to like their chronic negativity, and then even related to the happiness piece. So how I describe this is like, everything is energy, right? And we learned this in fourth grade. The chairs that we're sitting on, the grass outside, everything is energy. We know that our thoughts. I have one of my other quotes in here about. Let's see, where is it? Anyway, our thoughts are energy. I can't find it right now. I have so many written down. Our thoughts are energy, right? So our energy will flow where our thoughts go. Our energy will flow where our thoughts go. So when I say speak to me in energy, I'll be able to understand you better. Think about the last time you went into a staff meeting, maybe as an example, where it was just like so tense in there, right? Like you could just feel it in this room. You could feel the stress, and you could feel the anxiety, you could feel the nervousness, whatever. Like you could feel all that stuff. And some people might even say things like, man, it was so stressful in there, you could cut it with a knife, right? Like I've heard people say that before. And then I asked them, well, What is it that you could cut? What is the it, right? You could cut it with a knife. So that it is like the energy that's in the room, right? When people come in there and they're feeling maybe anxious, they're feeling anger, they're feeling resentment, like you can feel that. That's what you can cut with a knife, right? So if you're looking at speak to me in energy, it'll be easier for me to understand you. Like, what is the energy telling you in that room, right? And if that's your norm and maybe your house is filled up with that kind of energy, and then you go to work and your workspace is filled with that kind of energy, like that's that's exhausting, and it contributes to the chronic negativity, right? It reinforces the chronic negativity, right? That becomes the norm. So how can we have happiness and joy when our norm is this chronic negativity? How can we have happiness and joy when we're in a constant state of anger and rage and resentment and, guilt and all of that kind of stuff, right? Because then that feeds into and leads into, you know, yelling and belittling and shaming and all of that kind of behavior. So speak to me in energy. It will be easier for me to understand you. So the flip side of that, you may have gone into a space, maybe a staff meeting, maybe a family gathering, maybe a training, like whatever. You may have gone into a space and you just felt like so uplifted, right? Like you felt so good, and everyone is saying good morning, and you're starting your day out, and you're checking in, and you're seeing where you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, and you're saying something that you're grateful for, and you're sharing one positive thing about yourself, and you're hearing other people do this as well, and you're laughing and you're connecting in a good way, and you just feel like so good, right? You feel like you can even levitate because you feel like you feel so good, right? That's the energy of love. That's the energy of kindness. That's the energy of happiness, right? Energy flows where our thoughts go, right? So, and even just have some awareness about that, and think about when you go into spaces, what is the energy telling you, right? When you go into spaces, what is the energy telling you? And then you can take it personal as well. What is your energy telling when you go into a room? So what do people feel when you go into a room, right? I think I told the story on one of the power hours before, but years ago, we were invited to this gathering up in Seattle, Washington, called the Seeds of Compassion. And they were bringing in all of these like world spiritual leaders. And one of them was the Dalai Lama. And he wanted to meet with the tribal people that were involved in coordinating this event. Daryl Hilaire, who's on Lummi Tribal Council, he was kind of the leader, and so he reached out and he said, "Hey, can you help me, recruit some people to attend?" I'm like, "Yeah, and plus we'll be there too." So anyway, the Dalai Lama wanted to meet with the tribal people before he spoke in this huge stadium, where the Seahawks play. So we're all in the room, like 200 of us or something, and we're waiting for the Dalai Lama. And so we're all in our traditional regalia because we're going to be a part of this procession to bring him into the stadium. Anyway, these Secret Service people come in and they say, we're sorry, but the Dalai Lama won't be able to meet with you today. He has to be on a conference call. So at that time, I don't know, there's all kinds of stuff going on with his people. And anyway, he couldn't be with us. So we're just like, oh, bummer. And so the organizer said, go ahead and go get something to eat, use the restroom, whatever, before the procession started. And so most everybody left, except there was maybe like 30 people that were still in the room, including us. There was like, I don't know, 7 of us or something. And so we're just kind of looking down, like looking at our tickets, like, oh, where's our seats? And so we're looking down, and all of a sudden, like something changed in the room. The energy changed in the room. And I looked up and I'm like looking around, like what just happened? And all of a sudden, in walks the Dalai Lama. Like I could feel him before he even physically entered the room. And the best word that I can use is like I felt love. Like that's what I felt. And it was like powerful. It was a profound experience, like not just to see and be greeted by the Dalai Lama, but like to feel him before he even got into the room. And then he took the time individually to greet every single one of us. And it was like super powerful. And we got to meet him twice actually, because he came back and I actually I had a like a 10-second moment with the Dalai Lama where I gifted him this blanket, and we weren't supposed to give him gifts, the Secret Service men, but we, of course, everybody was anyway. Um, and he grabbed my hands and grabbed the gift and held it to him because the Secret Servicemen were trying to take it. And so I had this like 10 or 15 seconds just to tell him, you know, about this gift and the young people that had prayed over it and all this kind of stuff. It was awesome. But anyway, it was a profound experience for me because it made me think about, what do people feel when I walk into a room? That was a profound experience. What do people feel when I walk into a room? And I want people to feel good, right? I want people to feel good. So anytime if I'm going into a space, um, I'm going to make sure that, you know, that I feel good, that I feel grounded, that I'm filled with joy and love and kindness, because that's the energy that I want to give out and that I want people to feel, right? So just think of, you know, let that be a food for thought for you. What do people feel when you walk into a room, right? Awesome. And there's things that we can do to help us, you know, to feel better, right? Sometimes we have to do a redo. Maybe we come in the door and we're grouchy and tired and hungry and whatever. Well, we can do a redo. We can walk out the door, turn around and come back in and think about things in a different way, right? We can smudge, we can pray, we can drink water, we can eat, we can get more rest, right? So when we think about, you know, speak to me in energy, I'll be able to understand you better. All right. People are messaging me, all these beeps are going off. Um, okay, so let me move along here I have a whole bunch of them listed here. So let's see. Oh, here's some good ones. Um, and again, I'm not, these were in my notes and I didn't write down who said them, but when we work in our communities, like here's some questions that we can ask ourselves. um, Tell me your original teachings. Tell me your original teachings. So we can think about that, like what are your original teachings? So that really, we're talking about like, how did our ancestors live their lives by? What was the values of our ancestors, and how did that guide their behaviors? How did that guide their thinking, right? What were some of our teachings about things to do or not to do and all that kind of stuff? That's what we're talking about. Tell me your original teachings. Okay, and then the second question, how did those stop? How did those stop? Okay, how did those original teachings stop being passed down to the next generation? And of course, we still have many of our original teachings intact, or we're trying to get back to that, right? And then the third question related to this, working with our people and working in communities, is, so given that, tell me your original teachings, how did those stop? How did you survive? How did you survive? So thinking about that, really, this is about kind of what the Native Wellness Institute is all about, and our work is we help people like figure this out. I often call it connecting the dots. We help our people connect the dots between historical and intergenerational trauma. So we're talking about, how did our ancestors live before that, before colonization happened, right? Tell me your original teachings. How did those stop? And right now, you know, a lot of our people have been triggered and re-traumatized given the whole, discovery of the remains of the 215 children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, right? We know, like, we're getting calls and texts and messages and emails from people who are hurting, right? We're getting calls about, leading, support circles on Zoom and all of this kind of stuff. So it's making people, reflect and think, and it's making people look at the solutions as well, right? Lots of people are having all kinds of thoughts about excuse me, all kinds of things. But how did we survive? Like, we're still here, right? How did we survive? I often say that, I descend from miracle survivors of genocide. I descend from miracle survivors of genocide, but that's like another quote. Um, and what that makes me think of is like, dang, like, this is how amazing my ancestors were, right? This is how amazing my great grandparents and grandparents and parents and me, like, this is how amazing we are, right? I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that later because I have some other quotes related to that. But anyway, we did survive, and we're not just surviving, we are thriving. So these are just some food for thought questions as we work in our communities, right? Tell me your original teachings. How did those stop? How did you survive? So related to that is, Martin Luther King once said, "I have a dream," right? And you've probably heard that before, heard his speech before. And related to that, our ancestors said, "I am dreaming of you. I am dreaming of you." Okay. So here's three more questions for food for thought. Um, what kind of ancestor did my ancestors envision me to be? What kind of ancestor did my ancestors envision me to be? That's pretty deep, right? And then the second question, what kind of ancestor do I want to be? What kind of ancestor do I want to be? And then the third one, what kind of ancestor am I dreaming future generations to be with my actions today? What kind of ancestor am I dreaming future generations to be with my actions today? Like, aren't those awesome? Like, I love those. And I just remember, I clearly just, like, flipping through my notes on my phone and, like, reading these things, like, to be inspired. That's why I'm sharing them with you today, because I want you to be inspired as well. Okay, so I'm gonna move along. I have tons of them, so I'm just kind of floating around here on my page. So, oh, here's a really good one. One of the lasting impacts of trauma is the fear of conflict. The fear of conflict. And so we can even look in our own lives, like, when we try to avoid conflict or sweep it under the rug, or we minimize it, like, I'm guilty of all of those things. Um, and maybe we have a fear of conflict because of, how our childhood was, maybe around anger or rage or whatever, right? So we may fear conflict and we don't want to deal with it. And we know that when we don't deal with it, it just kind of like explodes and becomes a bigger thing. Well, what if we approached it differently, right? Even the word conflict can be like triggering for people. Just that word conflict, right? Maybe it makes our hands sweaty or our heart rate go or something like that. What if we looked at it as, finding peace or finding balance, right? Instead of conflict resolution, bringing or finding peace. But also, what if we looked at it like this? How did I hurt you? What if we approached making peace like that. How did I hurt you? And that was the very beginning process. I think that's awesome. And I'm actually using that like in my work now, when especially when we do like our wellness in the workplace work, of like having people share that. How did I hurt you? You know, like that takes vulnerability for one, right? It takes coming from a place of care, coming from a place of love, coming from a place of respect to even ask that question. How did I hurt you? So I challenge you, like the next time, you have a little bit of, conflict with somebody, whether it's a sibling or a significant other or a friend or a coworker, like to start out like that. How did I hurt you? And just see how that goes, right? Like see how that goes. So, okay, I'm gonna cruise along here. Okay, here's a good one. When you embrace the creator within, you wake up with gratitude and you ask yourself, how can I use myself today to help and be of service? So let me repeat that again. When you embrace the creator within, you wake up with gratitude and you ask yourself, how can I use myself today to help and be of service? And so I love this because, you know, um, I was always taught that like like creator, whatever you call the creator, maybe you say God, maybe you say creator, maybe you say the word in your language, maybe you say higher power, right? But when we believe that the creator is within us, right? The creator is within us. That's why I always find it funny when or maybe I shouldn't say funny, but odd, I guess might be the better word, when people say, I'm a God fearing woman, I'm a God fearing man, I'm a God fearing person, or whatever. And I always think, like, why? Like, why would you fear God? Like, why would you fear the creator? Like, that means because in my belief system, the creator is in everything, right? In every blade of grass and every flower within us. So why would we fear that, right? So when you embrace the creator within, you wake up with gratitude and you ask yourself, how can I use myself today to help and to be of service? Right? So that's one of my favorites. Imagine if we woke up every morning and that was like our first thought, right? Like how it would change our day and how it would change like other people's days too. Okay, so related to that, then here's another quote. Um, Life of the infinite. When you do your work, you understand that the universe is behind you. Life of the infinite. That means, you know, that that it's life is abundant. Life is abundant, and whatever you want, like you can have. And when we do our work, we often call like Gene Tagaban, he always says, do our homework, like our heart work, right? We need to work on our own selves. Basically, like we have to do our own healing and cleanse ourselves of all that stuff that we hold on to. So when we do that, when we start doing our work, when we begin our healing journeys, we realize and we understand that the universe is behind us. We realize and understand that whatever that means to you, the universe, right? To me, the universe means like, it's the energy of the creator, it's the energy of our ancestors, it's the energy of all these good thoughts, it's the energy of the prayers that have been said for thousands of years and that are currently being said now. It's like, to me, that's what the universe is, right? And so when we understand that life, right, life of the infinite, I can have anything that I want. And when I do my homework, right? When I work on my own healing, I understand that the universe is behind me. The universe has my back. The universe is cheering me on. Like that's what that means, right? And it's just awesome. Like that, I really strive to live my life like that, and it's not about material things, right? But it could be, right? It's just like it's just seeing the infinite possibilities, right? The infinite potential that I have as a human being. So this other kind of related to that. This is what I wrote down. I must have been watching something on TV and taking notes on my phone. So this one says, when you believe more in what you can't see than what you see, then what you do see, you won't see, and what you don't see, you will see. When I wrote that down for this, I had to like reread that like 3 or 4 times. Um, when you believe more in what you can't see than what you see, then what you do see, you won't see, and what you don't see, you will see. So just think about that. Just do some deep thinking on that. I was doing some deep thinking about that this morning when I was writing it down. So, I think it is related to what I was just sharing about the universe and what we think that is, or what we know it is, or what we have experienced what it is, believing that, the universe wants good things for us, right? And instead of thinking about someone is always out to get me, and you know putting our focus on all the haters that are out there, or whatever, like kind of being in this kind of victim realm, right? We can believe like, no, like the world is mine, and I'd have to start thinking about things in order to bring these things to me, right? So anyway, just some food for thought to think about. Kind of, it goes back to the original, or one of the first quotes I shared about, something about, I didn't know I could be happy. I didn't know that I could have joy in my life, right? And when we grow up where our norms are, you know, living in violence, or living in addiction, or living in all of that kind of stuff, like that's all we know, right? That's all we know is examples of unhealthy relationships. And then we continue to grow, and then we become an adult, and then we get into unhealthy relationships, and that's all we know, because that's our norm. Yesterday I was doing this training, and I was asking them some questions from that ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences questionnaire. It's like 10 questions. And we went through them, and one of the participants said, well, yeah, I have a pretty high ACE score, but I just thought that was normal, right? All the questions on there is about like this is about abuse as a child. And so for so many of us, like that is our norm, right? And we don't know any different until we have an experience that is different. So for example, maybe as you know a high schooler, or junior high, or elementary even, maybe you go to someone else's house. You go to someone else's house for dinner, or to spend the night, or whatever. And this family, maybe they all kind of cook dinner together, and then they all sit down at the table and they eat dinner together at the same table. Maybe they pray before they eat. Maybe they say things like, oh, can you please pass the salt and pepper? Oh, thank you. Maybe they talk in normal tones, and they visit during their dinner. Maybe after dinner, they help clear the table and clean up and do the dishes. And then maybe after that, they all go, sit in the living room and visit or watch a movie together. And you might be sitting there like, whoa, what is going on? Like, we don't do this in my home, right? So now you have this new experience, right? Or maybe you read books, and in these books, these families live in certain ways that aren't like your norm, right? So our worldview gets expanded a little bit, and it might feel so good. Or the same example of when you go to a gathering and people are positive and happy, and you have this experience and you get to feel the way it feels, right? And you're like, I want more of that. Like, I want more of that, right? And then you think about how can I get there? How can I get there? Right? So that's kind of what, like, all these quotes are about for me. Like, they help to inspire me, and I hope they're inspiring to you as well. So, related to that is another one. Um, Unleash your own truth. You are creating your reality with your thoughts. The universe is constantly reflecting back your thoughts. Let me repeat that. Unleash your own truth. You are creating your reality with your thoughts. The universe is constantly reflecting back your thoughts. So this is important, right? This is important. And even that I asked you one of the questions about, what are your original teachings? So if our ancestors lived a life of gratitude, like, what do you think our thoughts were, right? If our ancestors lived a life of gratitude, what do you think their thoughts were? Or, one of our original teachings is about when we're making things, whether it's a pair of earrings, or we're weaving a cedar rose, or we're cooking food, or we're making clothing for somebody, or whatever, right? Some of those original teachings are, when we're doing things like that, we're putting our good energy into that. We're putting our love, and we're putting our kindness, and we're thinking about that person who we're making it for, right? So the teaching is, because we're putting those good things in there, like, we're having those good thoughts, right? So when we unleash our own truth, we're creating our reality with our thoughts. So when our thoughts are positive, right? When our thoughts are coming from a place of gratitude, the second part of this is saying the universe is constantly reflecting back our thoughts. So some people might also say that as what you put out there, you're going to get back. That's basically what this is saying, and you've probably heard that before, right? The universe is constantly reflecting back your thoughts. So what are your thoughts, right? So thankfully, I years and years ago, I did this digital story. It's on our website, nativewellness.com. Um, and if you click on my bio, you can click on my digital story, but it's called I Was Born to Be Positive. I was born to be positive. And I really, like, truly believe that from the time I was young, until now. I'm still young. I'm 55. But I feel young. Like, I just naturally think positively. I'm a natural solution oriented person. I'm naturally, creative. Like, that's just how my brain is, right? And of course, I have bad days. Of course, I'm grouchy and grumpy sometimes. Of course, I can be negative. Like, yeah, but my norm is positive. And I really believe that, like, I was born to be positive, and that's been reinforced, like, my whole life, basically, right? So I know the power of creating my reality with my thoughts, and some people might call it manifesting or whatever, right? Um, I don't really like use that word a lot or whatever, but I think about things. I think about what I want, like, and I'm already like in a space of gratitude about it. And then like guess what? Then it happens, right? So I understand that I am creating my own reality with my thoughts. Like I deeply understand that, and that the universe is constantly reflecting back my thoughts. So that's how come I want to stay in the space of positivity. I want to stay in this space of gratitude, right? And even in sadness, whether it's, we've all had this loss during COVID, right? Either losing family members that have died, or the loss of seeing our friends, the loss of gathering, the loss of even our regular workspace, as an example, right? We've all had a lot of loss. And even in that, again, when we go back to our original teachings, some of our original teachings tell us, even in sadness, even in sorrowful times, there's still going to be joy, right? There's always that flip side. So even in that sadness, there's still going to be joy. So even in this pandemic, I've been saying, in this whole pandemic, I've been saying, this is a blessing. Like when a blessing happens, I point it out. This is a blessing of COVID. This is a blessing of COVID. This is a blessing of COVID, just to help balance out all of the loss and the sorrow and all of that, right? So just some other things to think about. So okay, related to that, here's another quote here. Um, Clarity and humbleness lives in love. Clarity and humbleness lives in love. And when you have that, you will see everything as a gift, and then you will thrive. Clarity and humbleness lives in love. And when you have that, you will see everything as a gift, and you will thrive. Like, isn't that awesome? Like when I was retyping that out in my notes, I was just like, wow, that is like powerful, right? That is powerful when you have clarity and humbleness. Clarity and humbleness lives in love. And when you have that, you will see everything as a gift. So, an example of that, this colleague of mine, I'll see her later today in a meeting this afternoon. She was all excited to apply for this job. She was going to apply for like this director job or whatever. And she asked if I would write her a letter and be a reference for her. It's like, of course. So I did. And she was like really certain that she was going to get it. Well, she didn't. She didn't get the job. And she texted me and she was like devastated and angry and crying and the whole thing. And so I just paused for a little bit and then I responded and I told her, I said, well, I'm happy. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you didn't get that job. And I said, and I know once you move through this initial shock and grief that you'll understand what I'm saying. Right. So even that I saw as a gift, right? I believe that the universe had her back and she wasn't supposed to be in that position. Right. So she finally came around. She goes, yeah, you're right. I was kind of annoyed when you said that. She said, but I get it now. Like I understand now. I've already let that go and I've already moved on. Right. And now like this other, like even more amazing opportunity has come along for her. So now she can reflect back and see that her not getting that job was a gift. So think about all the times in our lives when we get all worked up and, because something doesn't go our way, or we think it doesn't go our way and we take it personal and, all of that kind of stuff, when maybe really it was a gift, right? And sometimes we say, trust the process. And to me, that means like trust the creator, right? So just some other things to think about. I love that one. Okay, I'm going to share two more because it's already almost time. So this one, I hope he's tuning in today. He's a regular. This one is from Fabian. And I was in a meeting with him and I wrote this down in my notes. And he just said, I'm a walking ceremony. I'm a walking ceremony. This is said by Fabian. And so the context of we were in this meeting and just think about it. What if you walked in your life thinking that you were a ceremony, right? Like think about what happens in a ceremony. How do you behave in a ceremony? How do other people behave in a ceremony? Why do we have ceremony? So you can ask yourselves all those kind of questions. And then think about, I'm a walking ceremony, meaning I'm not just going to be grateful. I'm not just going to be respectful. I'm not just going to be in a space of positivity when I'm in sitting or standing in a ceremony. It's like I'm going to be in a ceremony 24/7, 365. I'm a walking ceremony. I'm always going to be in a state of gratitude. I'm always going to be in a state of abundance thinking. I'm always going to be in a state of being respectful. Like what if we all lived our lives like that and believed, right, that I'm a walking ceremony? Isn't that awesome? I love that. Okay, so I'm scrolling down here. Every time I do a power hour, like I don't get to everything that I want to say. I have like 3 pages of notes here, but I'm going to scroll down to the very last one um, because this was in my notes, and I don't know where I heard this, but I thought it was so funny that I put it in my notes, and so I'm ending on this one because humor is such a big part of who we are as tribal people, as indigenous people. Humor helps us to get through challenging times. Humor helps us to heal. It releases endorphins and all kinds of things that makes me feel good. So here's the quote: a lonely cry of an imprisoned turd is a fart. Still, this makes me crack up now. A lonely cry of an imprisoned turd is a fart. So I'm going to leave you on that note. Thank you for being here on our power hour where our time like literally flew by. I hope you enjoyed it. All of our power hours are saved on our Facebook page. They're also saved on our YouTube channel. You can go back and there's now over 350 sessions. You can do anything, stretching and movement to tips and tools for healing, healthy cooking demonstrations, comedy, like all kinds of stuff. They're there for you and for your wellness and healing journey. So please tune in. We want to give thanks to the Urban Indian Health Institute who helped sponsor these. We're grateful for that. We hope you have an amazing weekend. And we hope to see you next week as well. All right. See you later.